hilarious. Now, typically, when all these communist kings start discussing things with each other, communist China and communist Russia didn't get along. They were more at each other's throat than the West were that dealt with each of them independently. And this is going to deteriorate into an end-time war because the people that are put in these positions of authority or power will want their absolute power and authority and will destroy everybody who ever tried to help them. There's some interesting pictures of Stalin, you know, in the 30s, with 4 other individuals to his left. And over the 8 years, I think it was 7, 8 years, each one of the pictures was reduced by one of the individuals who was at his right hand or his helpmate. All of them were killed. Pol Pot took those individuals that helped them most, and 2 of them at the end time before he finally died, he tied them up, laid them all out in a straight line. That's the individuals that had put him in power and helped him get there, all of their family, all of their wives and relatives, all of their children and grandchildren, and were run over by a tank. This is the type of thinking that's coming upon us as the West, principally because we are physical, the 10 lost tribes of Israel. We have refused to do what God told us, and we're going to be crushed and taken into captivity. So you all now have a chance to watch this happen. Some of our younger children and stuff will, you know, just without lecturing anybody, you can just make the points to your children that here's what's coming, watch this and watch that. Maybe you should listen to what your old-time parents told you, that you should be keeping these laws, etc. And it'd be better for you if you did, although it may not seem so at the time. So I wanted to read the 10 articles, and I think everybody will see that they're in effect in the West under law today. So this is written up in March 2009, and their final culmination is just being brought to fruition over these next perhaps 3, but perhaps up to 10 years before it's finally stamped on planet Earth. But it's in place today. It's just the power over the various militaries is not in place and is risky for those implementing it, because they will bring about the final, or what's called the tribulation in Scripture. And the tribulation comes about because we as a people have failed to keep the covenant of God, minus the sacrificial components. So here's Article 1. See if anybody recognizes this. The abolition of all property in land and the application of all rents of land to public purposes. So never in history has anybody under the British Commonwealth system paid a tax on the land that they owned, ever. The first thing that was the aristocracy in England were taxed on their property. Now, formerly they used to charge 20 to 30% for the people that lived on their land as tenured for the continued use of the land, and as a virtual rent, the individual aristocracy paid an entitlement to the crown, none of which was as high or severe as the rents you're paying in total today. America's the easiest one to track because they are better at publishing their documentation on it. Okay, but the point is, you have removed your entitlement to hold property. So even though it's in your name, you don't own it. And this has taken less than 70 years to implement in America. It's much more readily done or easier done in the British Commonwealth nations. So, abolition of land. You look at, I think you'll find you don't hold a deed. All you hold is a registration of title, which is not ownership of property. It's a registration of title. So you're entitled to live there if you pay your taxes. And if you don't, you're out. So you can have 80-year-old widows who have paid every tax put on them and their husband and their families, who will be evicted from that land because the state owns the land, the same as the state owns the people, owns all the children, etc. Okay, Article 2, a heavy progressive income tax. So God says You don't own the land, you hold it in trust. You will pay 10% of your net profit on the income you earn. Then the Israelites said, no, we want a king. And he said, well, the king's going to tax you excessively. Oh, well, that doesn't matter. We want the king to fight our... So now you have a king to fight your battles, and it's called the Communist Manifesto, of where they will take care of you from your, from your birth to your death. The income tax has gone from 10% of your profit, which is net, to somewhere between 30 to 80% in the West. If you add up all the taxes and varying taxes that you pay, you'll see it's that extensive. Article 3, the abolition of all rights of inheritance. So no longer, if you own a home, it's 100% paid for, you own some property or you own anything, you may not give it to your children tax-free or gratis. And why would that be? You've already paid every single tax and 3 or 4 times what your are entitled to. In Canada, it's generally 25 or close to 30%. So if I worked for 50 years and I paid everything off, paid all my taxes, and wish to give something to a son or daughter, the government will take an additional 30% of the value of that property. Why? Because I don't, in effect, own the property. It's not something I can give to my offspring. Well, that is part of the plan, going back to early 1800s, 1848 it was published. You have lost all rights of inheritance to give to your children. Confiscation of all property of all immigrants and rebels. So anybody that disagrees with this or that government, especially people who came from somewhere else to the British Commonwealth nations or were the British people and just disagreed with the local government, all your property that you possess is confiscated. So that's your bank accounts, and you saw that in Venezuela, 8 or 10 years ago, where every bank was closed. People were allowed to take something like $100 or $200 a week out, regardless of how much they had in there. And so you have absolute control on the property of people. And how that is done is in Article 5 by the centralization of credit in the banks of the state by means of a national bank. Now, America, after Andrew Jackson crushed the first and second American national banks and fired, imagine firing 20% of the federal employees today. Well, that's quite a... I'd like to have the ability to do that. I would do it. And he did it. And he crushed the central bank that was then put back in place by Woodrow Wilson, who regretted it to his dying day when it finally sunk in his pinhead what he had done to America. He stated, one day, you Americans will wake up understanding that you do not own any of the property you think you do. And it's caused by debt financing. So all money is debt-based, it's not real money. And it's implemented by means of the Federal Reserve. Now, in America, you're still allowed to speak that way. In parts of Canada and the British Commonwealth, you're actually not. I don't know if we can all go to jail for my commentary today, but fine. So I hope I'm trying to just bring this to everybody's attention so that when you're discussing things with your friends, etc., make it clear that we all are a communist nation. And when I discuss this with some people from that had left, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, from they were Hungarians and their parents, etc., and they said, we thought we were coming here to freedom, but it appears to us that we're just living under what they called soft communism. Okay, so we in the Northwest European tribes and nations, North America, Australia, New Zealand, etc., are basically, according to people who know it intimately and much better than we would, that we're just soft communists because they aren't going to murder 40 or 50 or 60 million of us like Stalin and Lenin and Karl Marx did. And that's what's coming again. Except it'll be, perhaps close to 90% of planet Earth will be